I already left, but not empty-handed.
I always thought family meant safety. Turns out, it's just a fancier word for ambush. My name is Will Parrish, and I'm about to tell you how I learned that lesson the hard way. At 38, I thought I had life figured out. I was an electrical engineer at Parrish Industries, the family business my grandmother Ruth still ran with an iron fist. I had a beautiful wife, Beth, 2 teenage daughters, and a house in the suburbs that looked like something from a magazine. The first crack in my perfect world appeared on a Tuesday morning in October. Beth was standing in our kitchen, wearing yoga pants that cost more than most people's rent, scrolling through her phone with that secret smile she'd been wearing a lot lately. "Going to the club again tonight?" I asked, pouring coffee into my favorite mug. The one that said, "World's Okayest Dad." She didn't look up. "Yeah, the girls and I are trying that new place downtown." "Which girls? You don't know them." That was the thing about Beth lately. I didn't know anyone in her life anymore. Her friends had become mysterious entities, her schedule a classified document, and our conversations felt like diplomatic negotiations between hostile nations. "Maybe I could meet them sometime," I suggested. She finally looked up, and her green eyes held all the warmth of a January morning. "They're not really your type, Will. Too young and fun." The words hit like a slap, but I kept my expression neutral. After 15 years of marriage, I'd learned to hide my reactions to Beth's casual cruelties. She delivered them with the precision of a surgeon and the frequency of a morning alarm. "Right, well, have fun with your young, fun friends." "I will." She grabbed her purse and headed for the door, then paused. "Oh, and John's coming by later to look at the books for the quarterly review." John, my older brother, the golden boy, the VP of operations who'd never met a mirror he didn't like or a compliment he didn't deserve. The fact that he was coming to my house to review company finances that I, as the head of engineering, had no involvement with, should have been my second red flag of the day. "Why here? Why not at the office?" He said it would be more comfortable, less formal. She shrugged like it didn't matter, but something in her voice made my engineer's brain start connecting circuits it didn't want to connect. After she left, I sat in my kitchen, drinking coffee and staring at the family photo on the refrigerator. B, my 15-year-old, grinning with her mouth full of braces. Bree, 13, and still young enough to think her parents were heroes instead of disappointments. Beth and I on either side, arms around each other, smiling like we meant it. When had we stopped meaning it? My phone buzzed. A text from my best friend Carl. "Beer tonight? Jenny's working late and I'm bored." I typed back, "Can't. Beth's going out and someone needs to watch the girls." "Again? Dude, when's the last time you went anywhere?" Good question. When was the last time I'd done anything that wasn't work or family obligations? When had I become the default babysitter for my own children while my wife lived like a college student? The front door slammed, making me jump. Beth was back, but she looked different. Flustered, angry. "Forget something?" I asked. My phone charger. She was moving around the kitchen like a tornado, opening drawers and slamming them shut. "Have you seen it? Try the bedroom." She disappeared upstairs, and I heard her moving around, opening and closing doors. When she came back down, she had the charger in one hand and her phone in the other. The phone was buzzing. "Popular today," I observed. She glanced at the screen, and that secret smile returned. "It's nothing." But as she turned to leave, I caught a glimpse of the name on the screen, John. My brother was texting my wife at 9:30 in the morning about something that had made her smile, like she had a delicious secret. The third red flag of the day, and it was barely breakfast time. After Beth left for real this time, I found myself doing something I'd never done before. I started paying attention, really paying attention, to the little things that had been bothering me for months, but that I'd dismissed as paranoia or middle-aged insecurity, like how Beth had suddenly developed an interest in working out. Not just yoga, but serious gym time. She'd bought new workout clothes, expensive ones, and started talking about pushing her limits and discovering her potential. Like how she'd changed her hair, cutting it shorter and adding highlights that cost more than my monthly car payment. When I'd complimented the new look, she'd said, "It's nice that someone notices," in a tone that suggested I was the someone who usually didn't. Like how our daughters had started treating me differently. Not badly, exactly, but like I was a guest in my own house. They'd developed inside jokes I wasn't part of and conversations that stopped when I entered the room. and like how John had been around more lately, dropping by for business discussions that happened in our living room instead of his office, staying for dinner when Beth invited him, making himself comfortable in my house in a way that felt less like family and more like something else. I was still thinking about all of this when my phone rang. It was Joanne, one of the executive assistants at the company. Joanne was in her 50s, sharp as a tack, and had been with Parrish Industries since before I was born. She also had a talent for knowing everything that happened in the office before it actually happened. Will, you got a minute? Sure, Joanne, what's up? There was a pause. I probably shouldn't be calling you about this, but, well, you should know that John's been asking a lot of questions about your projects lately. Technical stuff that's way above his pay grade. My stomach tightened. What kind of questions? Cost overruns, timeline delays, client complaints. The kind of stuff that would make someone look bad if it got back to your grandmother. Ruth Parrish was 77 years old and still came to the office every day at 7 a.m. sharp. She'd built Parrish Industries from nothing after my grandfather died, and she didn't suffer fools, incompetents, or family members who thought their last name was a free pass to success. She also controlled 60% of the company's stock, which made her opinion the only one that really mattered. Any idea why John's suddenly interested in my department? Another pause. Will, honey, I've been working here for 30 years. I've seen a lot of family drama play out in these offices. When someone starts digging into another person's work, it's usually because they're looking for ammunition. Ammunition for what? That's what you need to figure out. After Joanne hung up, I sat in my kitchen, staring at my coffee and feeling like the ground was shifting under my feet. John was investigating my work. Beth was getting mysterious texts from John. My daughters were treating me like an outsider. My wife was going out every night with friends I'd never met. Either I was losing my mind or I was being set up for something. I decided to find out which. That evening, I did something I hadn't done in months. I paid attention to my family. Beth came home at 6, showered, and spent an hour getting ready to go out. She put on a black dress that was definitely not designed for a casual girls' night, along with heels that added 4 inches to her height and about 10 years to my blood pressure. Wow, I said when she came downstairs. That's some outfit for hanging out with the girls? She smoothed the dress over her hips, a gesture that was both unconscious and calculated. We're going somewhere nice tonight. I want to look good. You always look good. She gave me a look that was part surprise, part suspicion. Thanks. Bea wandered into the living room, took one look at her mother, and whistled. Mom, you look amazing. Are you sure you're not going on a date? Beth laughed, but it sounded forced. Just because I'm married doesn't mean I have to look like a soccer mom all the time. Hey, I protested. What's wrong with soccer moms? Nothing, if you're into that sort of thing, Beth said, checking her reflection in the hallway mirror. Some people prefer women with a little more excitement in their lives. There it was again. Another casual cruelty delivered with a smile. I was starting to collect them like stamps. The doorbell rang and Beth's face lit up. That's my ride. She opened the door and John walked in. My brother looked like he'd stepped out of a magazine ad for expensive whiskey or luxury cars. Perfect hair, perfect teeth, perfect suit that probably cost more than I made in a week. At 41, he was 3 years older than me, but looked 10 years younger, thanks to a personal trainer, a nutritionist, and what I was pretty sure was a little help from a plastic surgeon. Hey, Will, he said, giving me the kind of handshake that was meant to establish dominance. Hope you don't mind me stealing your wife for the evening. Stealing her? I'm Beth's ride, John explained, his arms sliding around my wife's waist in a gesture that was supposed to look casual but felt anything but. My date canceled last minute, and Beth mentioned she was going out, so I thought I'd tag along. You know how it is. Safety in numbers. I looked at my wife standing in my hallway with my brother's arm around her, wearing a dress that cost more than most people's mortgage payments, and felt something cold settle in my stomach. Have fun, I managed. After they left, I sat on my couch with my daughters, pretending to watch a movie while my mind raced. Bea was texting someone, her fingers flying over the screen with the kind of urgency that only teenage drama could inspire. Bree was reading a book, occasionally glancing up at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Dad? Bree's voice was small, uncertain. Yeah, sweetheart? Are you and Mom okay? The question hit me like a punch to the gut. Why do you ask? She shrugged, but her eyes stayed on my face. You guys don't talk much anymore, and Mom's been going out a lot. Mom deserves to have fun with her friends. But they're not really her friends, are they? I looked at my 13-year-old daughter, this wise little person who saw more than I'd given her credit for. What do you mean? I heard her on the phone the other night. She was talking to someone about you. She said... Bree paused, looking uncomfortable. What did she say? She said you were getting boring, that you never wanted to do anything fun anymore, and that maybe it was time for her to find someone who appreciated her. The words hung in the air between us like smoke from a fire I hadn't noticed was burning. I wanted to tell my daughter that she'd misunderstood, that her mother would never say such things, that our family was solid and safe and nothing was going to change. Instead, I pulled her closer and said, whatever happens, you and Bea are the most important things in the world to me. You know that, right? She nodded against my shoulder, but I could feel her trembling. At midnight, I was still awake when I heard Beth's key in the lock. She came in quietly, trying not to wake anyone, but I was sitting in the dark living room waiting for her. Have fun? I asked. She jumped, pressing a hand to her chest. God, Will, you scared me. What are you doing sitting in the dark? Waiting for you. How was your night? Fine, good. We went to that new place on 5th Street. She was moving toward the stairs, clearly wanting to end the conversation. John have a good time? She paused, one foot on the bottom step. I guess. Why? Just wondering. It's nice of him to look out for you. He's a good friend. Is that what we're calling it? The question slipped out before I could stop it. Beth turned around slowly, and even in the dim light from the street, I could see her face change. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing. Forget I said anything. No, I don't think I will. What exactly are you implying, Will? I stood up and we faced each other across our living room like duelists in an old Western. 15 years of marriage, 2 children, a mortgage, and 1,000 shared memories. And it had come down to this moment of truth in the dark. I'm not implying anything. I'm asking directly. Are you having an affair with my brother? The silence stretched between us like a wire about to snap. Beth's face went through several expressions, surprise, anger, and something that might have been relief. You're paranoid, she said finally. That's not an answer. It's the only answer you're getting. She started up the stairs, then paused and looked back at me. You know what your problem is, Will? You've gotten comfortable, complacent. You think that just because we're married, you don't have to try anymore? Well, guess what? Other people still make an effort. Other people still know how to make a woman feel special. Other people like John? She smiled, and it was the coldest thing I'd ever seen. If you don't like how I live, then just leave. The words hit me like a physical blow. After everything we'd built together, after all the years and the children and the promises, it came down to this. If I didn't like being betrayed and humiliated, and I could just leave. Fine, I said quietly. Fine what? I'll leave, but not the way you think. I spent the rest of the night in the guest room staring at the ceiling and planning. Beth thought she held all the cards. She thought I was just going to roll over and accept whatever scraps of respect she felt like throwing my way. She thought I was weak. She was about to learn how wrong she was. The next morning, Beth left early for a yoga class that I was pretty sure involved more than stretching. The girls were at school. The house was empty except for me and the 15 years of memories I was about to pack up and take with me. I started with my clothes, folding them carefully into suitcase after suitcase, then my books, my tools, my personal papers, my photographs, everything that was mine and mine alone. I worked methodically, room by room, erasing myself from the house that had been our home. In my study, I found the folder of financial documents I'd been meaning to organize. Bank statements, investment records, insurance policies, the deed to the house. I packed it all along with the backup drives containing copies of every important document we owned. By noon, my car was loaded with everything I could carry. The rest would have to wait, but I'd gotten the essentials. I sat down at the kitchen table and wrote a note. Beth, you said if I didn't like how you live, I should just leave, so I did. The girls can reach me on my cell phone. My lawyer will be in touch about the divorce. Will, I left the note on the kitchen counter, right next to the coffee maker she used every morning. Then I locked the door behind me and drove away from the life I'd built, toward whatever came next. I went to Carl's house. Carl Robertson had been my best friend since college, the best man at my wedding, and the godfather to my daughters. He was also recently divorced, which made him uniquely qualified to understand what I was going through. Jesus, Will, he said when he opened the door and saw me standing there with my suitcases. What happened? Beth's been screwing my brother. I left. Carl stared at me for a moment, then stepped aside to let me in. I was wondering when you'd figure that out. You knew? I suspected. Jenny saw them together at that restaurant on Market Street last week. They weren't exactly being subtle. I dropped my bags in Carl's living room and sank into his couch. Why didn't you tell me? Would you have believed me? He had a point. A week ago, if someone had told me my wife was cheating on me with my brother, I would have laughed in their face. Now it seemed so obvious I couldn't believe I'd missed it. So what's the plan? Carl asked, handing me a beer. Divorce. Take her for everything she's worth. Make sure John gets what's coming to him. That's not a plan. That's a wish list. What's your actual strategy? I took a long pull of beer and thought about it. Beth and John thought they were so clever, so careful, so much smarter than boring old Will. They thought I'd just disappear quietly, maybe fight for some custody and a fair split of assets. They were wrong. I'm going to destroy them, I said. Both of them. Completely and publicly. By the time I'm done, they'll wish they'd never met each other. Carl raised his beer in a mock toast. Now that sounds like a plan. The first call came at 3 in the afternoon. Beth, her voice shaking with what sounded like genuine panic. Will, what the heck is going on? I came home and all your stuff is gone. There's a note about divorce lawyers. This isn't funny. I was sitting in Carl's backyard, enjoying my first peaceful afternoon in months. It wasn't meant to be funny. You can't just leave. We have children. We have responsibilities. We had a marriage too, but that didn't stop you from throwing it away. I don't know what you think you know, but I know you're sleeping with John. I know you've been lying to me for months. I know you think I'm too boring and old-fashioned for your exciting new lifestyle. Did I miss anything? The silence on the other end of the phone stretched for so long I thought she'd hung up. Finally, she spoke, and her voice was different, colder, more calculating. Fine, you want to play hardball? Let's play. But don't expect this to be easy. I'm not going to just roll over and let you take everything. I wouldn't dream of it, and this is going to be fun. The second call came an hour later. John, and he sounded pissed. What the heck do you think you're doing? I think I'm getting divorced. Is there something unclear about that? You can't just walk away from your family. Watch me. We'll be reasonable. Whatever you think is going on, I think you're seeing my wife. Am I wrong? Another long silence. Then, it's not what you think. Really? Because I think you're a backstabbing piece of crap who's been screwing his brother's wife while pretending to be family. If it's not that, please enlighten me. Look, things just happened. We didn't plan it. The admission hit me like a slap, even though I'd been expecting it. Hearing him say it out loud made it real in a way that all my suspicions hadn't. How long? Well, how long, John? 6 months. Maybe 7 months. While I was working 60-hour weeks to keep the company running, while I was coaching Bee's soccer team and helping Bree with her science projects, while I was being the responsible husband and father, they were laughing at me behind my back. Here's what's going to happen, I said, my voice steady despite the rage building in my chest. I'm filing for divorce. I'm demanding my full share of the company stock. And I'm going to make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of man you really are. You can't do that. It would destroy the company. Should have thought of that before you decided to destroy my marriage. The third call came that evening. Ruth, my grandmother, the matriarch of the parish family, and the woman who could make grown men wet themselves with a single look. William, I hear there's been some drama. You could say that. John tells me you're being unreasonable, that you've misunderstood the situation. Did he tell you he's been sleeping with my wife? Ruth was quiet for a moment. At 77, she'd seen enough of life to know that family drama usually involves someone's pants ending up where they didn't belong. He mentioned there had been some complications. Is that what we're calling it? Complications? William, I'm not going to pretend to understand the details of your marriage, but I will say this. Parish Industries has survived for 40 years because we don't let personal problems interfere with business. Whatever's happening between you and John, it stays out of the office. That might be a problem, Ruth. See, I'm thinking about selling my shares, all of them, to the highest bidder. I heard her sharp intake of breath. My shares, combined with the ones I'd inherit when she died, represented about 30% of the company. If I sold to a competitor or an outside investor, it could trigger a hostile takeover. You wouldn't. Try me, William Parrish. You listen to me. No, you listen to me. For 15 years, I've been the good son, the responsible one, the one who showed up to work every day and did his job and never caused any trouble. And where did it get me? My wife is screwing my brother, And you want me to keep quiet about it so it doesn't interfere with business. What do you want? I want John gone. Out of the company, out of my life, out of my family. I want Beth to get exactly what she deserves in the divorce, which is nothing. And I want everyone to know that there are consequences for betraying a parish. And if I don't agree, then you can explain to the board of directors why 30% of the company just got sold to Hartman Industries. Hartman was our biggest competitor, a company that had been trying to buy us out for years. The threat of selling to them was like threatening to burn down the house to end a spider. But sometimes you had to be willing to destroy everything to save what mattered. Ruth was quiet for a long time. Finally, she spoke, and her voice carried the weight of all her years and all her authority. You've got balls, boy. I'll give you that. But you're playing a dangerous game. I learned from the best. The next morning, I woke up in Carl's guest room and started phase 2 of my plan. I called in sick to work, then spent the day making appointments. First stop, Marcus Webb, the best divorce attorney in the city. Second stop, a private investigator named Sarah Chen, who specialized in marital infidelity. Third stop, the bank, where I moved half of our joint savings into an account that only I could access. By the time I was done, I had a legal team, a PI, and enough financial leverage to make Beth's life very complicated. But that was just the beginning. The real fun started when I got back to Carl's house and found a message on my phone from Joanne at the office. Will, honey, you need to call me. Something's happening here, and I don't think you're going to like it. I called her back immediately. What's going on, Joanne? John's been in meetings all day. First with your grandmother, then with the department heads, then with the accountants. Word is, he's trying to push you out of the company. On what grounds? Incompetence, mismanagement. He's claiming your projects are over budget and behind schedule, and that you've been cutting corners on safety protocols. I felt my blood pressure spike. That's complete BS. I know that, and you know that, but John's got documentation, reports, emails, budget analyses. It looks official. Forged? I don't know. But Will, if he can make this stick, your grandmother might have no choice but to let you go. And if you're fired for cause, your stock options could be voided. I hung up the phone and stared at Carl's living room wall, seeing my future crumble in real time. John wasn't just stealing my wife. He was trying to steal my career, my financial security, and my children's inheritance. He was trying to erase me completely. Bad news? Carl asked, coming into the room with 2 cups of coffee. The worst. John's trying to get me fired from the company. If he succeeds, I lose everything. So what do you do? I took the coffee and thought about it. John was playing chess while I'd been playing checkers. He'd been planning this for months, maybe longer. The affair with Beth wasn't just about love. It was about positioning himself to take over my life completely. But John had made one critical mistake. He'd underestimated me. I fight back, I said. And I fight dirty. The next morning, I did something I'd never done in 15 years of working at Parish Industries. I went to the office dressed for war. Instead of my usual khakis and polo shirt, I wore my best suit, the one I'd bought for my wedding and only brought out for funerals and board meetings. I walked through the office like I owned the place, which technically I partially did. Joanne looked up when I passed her desk, and her eyes widened. Will? I thought you were sick. I got better. Is John in? Conference room B. He's meeting with the safety committee about your projects. Perfect. I walked down the hall to conference room B and opened the door without knocking. John was standing at the head of the table, pointing to a presentation slide that showed a graph with alarming red bars and downward trending arrows. 6 department heads sat around the table, looking grave and concerned. Sorry I'm late, I said, walking into the room like I belonged there. I hear we're discussing my work. John's face went pale. Will, I thought you were sick. I was. Sick of being stabbed in the back by family. I walked to the front of the room and looked at the presentation screen. Interesting numbers, John. Where did you get them? From your project reports. Really? Because I don't remember submitting any reports that looked like this. I turned to face the safety committee. Has anyone here actually reviewed my original project files? The committee members looked at each other uncomfortably. Dave Morrison, the head of safety, cleared his throat. We were working from the summaries John provided. I see. And did anyone think to verify those summaries against the actual project data? More uncomfortable looks. John stepped forward, trying to regain control of the room. Will, I know you're upset about personal matters, but that doesn't give you the right to disrupt company business. I smiled at him, and it wasn't a nice smile. Personal matters? Is that what we're calling your affair with my wife? The room went dead silent. 6 department heads suddenly found their coffee cups fascinating. John's face went from pale to red to purple. That's not relevant to this meeting, isn't it? Because I'm starting to wonder if your sudden interest in discrediting my work might have something to do with the fact that you've been seeing my wife for the past 7 months. Dave Morrison stood up abruptly. Maybe we should reschedule this meeting. Sit down, Dave, I said, not taking my eyes off John. We're just getting started. I walked over to the conference room computer and plugged in a flash drive I'd prepared that morning. Since we're reviewing my work, let's look at the actual numbers. The screen filled with real data from my projects, budget reports, timeline analyses, safety inspections, client satisfaction surveys. Everything John had presented was either taken out of context or completely fabricated. As you can see, I continued, my projects are actually running under budget and ahead of schedule. Client satisfaction is at an all-time high. Safety violations are at 0. I turned back to John. So either you're incompetent at reading basic reports, or you're deliberately trying to sabotage me. Which is it? John was sweating now. Will, I think you're overreacting. Am I? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've been planning this for months. The affair with my wife, the fake reports about my work, the meetings with Ruth about pushing me out of the company. It's all connected, isn't it? The department heads were staring at John now, and I could see the wheels turning in their minds. They were smart people. They could connect the dots. Here's what I think happened, I continued. You and Beth decided you wanted my life, my house, my money, my position in the company. But you couldn't just take it. You had to destroy me first. Make it look like I was incompetent, unreliable, a failure as a husband and an employee. Then you could swoop in and save the day. That's insane, John said, but his voice lacked conviction. Is it? Let's ask the committee. Dave, how many times has John asked you about my projects in the past 6 months? Dave looked uncomfortable. Well, quite a few times, actually. And Sandra, I turned to the head of accounting. How many times has John requested detailed financial information about my department? Sandra shifted in her seat. It was unusual. He said he was doing a company-wide efficiency review. Funny thing about that efficiency review, I said, pulling up another document on the screen. I asked Ruth about it yesterday. She's never authorized any such review. The room was completely quiet now except for the hum of the air conditioning. John was trapped and everyone knew it. I want everyone in this room to understand something, I said, my voice calm but carrying an edge of steel. John Parrish is not just a cheating husband. He's a liar and a saboteur who is willing to destroy this company's reputation to cover up his personal failures. And if you think he won't do the same thing to any of you if it serves his purposes, you're naive. I unplugged my flash drive and headed for the door. Oh, and John, tell Beth I said hello. I'm sure you'll be seeing her later. I walked out of the conference room and straight to Ruth's office. She was sitting behind her massive oak desk, reading reports and looking like the queen of a small but prosperous kingdom. Grandmother. She looked up, took in my suit and my expression, and leaned back in her chair. I heard there was some excitement in conference room B. John tried to frame me for incompetence using falsified reports. I thought you should know. I see. And what do you want me to do about it? Fire him. He's family. So am I. And I'm the one who's been loyal to this company for 15 years, while he was planning to destroy it from the inside. Ruth studied me for a long moment. You've changed, William. A week ago, you would never have confronted John like that in front of the department heads. A week ago, I thought family meant something. I thought loyalty was a two-way street. I was wrong about a lot of things. And now? Now I know that the only person I can count on is myself. And I know that if you don't deal with John, I will. Is that a threat? It's a promise. That afternoon, I drove to Beth's yoga studio. It was one of those trendy places that charged $100 for classes that used to be free at the community center, full of women who wore workout clothes that cost more than most people's cars. I found Beth in the parking lot, loading her yoga mat into her BMW. She saw me coming and straightened up, her face a mask of cold anger. What are you doing here? We need to talk. I think you said everything you needed to say in that note you left. Actually, I'm just getting started. I leaned against her car, casual and relaxed, like we were discussing the weather. Nice performance on the phone yesterday, by the way. The panic, the confusion, the innocent victim act. Very convincing. I don't know what you're talking about. Sure you do. You and John have been planning this for months. The affair was just the beginning. You wanted everything, and the house, the money, custody of the girls, my position at the company. The only problem was me. Beth's mask slipped slightly. You're paranoid. Am I? Let's see. John starts asking questions about my work 6 months ago, right around the time your affair started. Coincidence? Then he starts building a case for my incompetence, using falsified reports. Meanwhile, you start going out every night, making me look like a neglectful husband. You turn the girls against me, make me seem like a boring, absent father. And then, when everything's in place, you give me an ultimatum. Accept your cheating or leave. You're insane. Here's the thing, Beth. You made one critical mistake. You assumed I was weak. You assumed I'd just roll over and let you destroy me, but you forgot something important. What's that? I smiled, and I could see her take an involuntary step backward. I'm a Parrish, and we don't lose. I got back in my car and drove away, leaving her standing in the parking lot looking like someone had just walked over her grave. That evening, I had dinner with my daughters. I'd asked them to meet me at their favorite restaurant, a family place where we'd celebrated birthdays and good report cards for years. They came reluctantly, clearly uncomfortable with the situation. Dad, B said as soon as we sat down, Mom says you're having some kind of breakdown. Does she? What else does Mom say? B and Bree exchanged a look. She says you're being unreasonable, that you're trying to punish her for wanting to have a life outside the family. And what do you think? Another look between the sisters. Finally, Bree spoke up. I think something's been wrong for a long time, and now it's all coming out. Smart kid. You're right, something has been wrong. Your mother has been having an affair with your Uncle John. Both girls went silent. Bee's face turned red, then white. Bree just stared at me, like I told her the sky was falling. That's not true, Bee said finally. I'm afraid it is. I know it's hard to hear, but I won't lie to you. Your mother and I are getting divorced because she chose to betray our family. But Uncle John, Bree's voice was small and confused. Uncle John is not the man we thought he was. Neither is your mother, apparently. We sat in silence for a few minutes, the weight of the truth settling over us like a heavy blanket. Finally, Bee looked up at me with tears in her eyes. What happens now? Now we figure out how to move forward. You're both old enough to understand that sometimes adults make terrible choices that hurt the people they're supposed to love. But I want you to know that none of this is your fault, and nothing that happens will change how much I love you. Will we still be a family? Bree asked. We'll always be a family. It just might look different than it did before. As I drove home to Carl's house that night, I felt something I hadn't felt in months, peace. Not happiness, that would take time, but a sense of clarity and purpose. And I knew who I was fighting and why. I knew what I had to do. Beth and John thought they were playing chess, moving pieces around the board while I stumbled around in the dark. But they'd made a fundamental miscalculation. I wasn't playing chess. I was playing war. The call came at 6 a.m. on a Saturday morning. Carl shook me awake, holding his phone with a grim expression. It's your grandmother. I took the phone, still half asleep. Ruth? William, we need to talk. Now. What's wrong? John's gone too far. Get to the office. I threw on clothes and drove to Parrish Industries, my mind racing. The building was empty except for security, but Ruth's car was in her reserved parking spot. I found her in the conference room, surrounded by papers and looking like she'd aged 10 years overnight. Sit down, she said without preamble. I sat. Ruth pushed a folder across the table to me. John filed a formal complaint with the board of directors yesterday afternoon. He's claiming you've been embezzling company funds and falsifying safety reports. He wants you fired and prosecuted. I opened the folder and scanned the documents. They were sophisticated forgeries, complete with fake signatures and altered financial records. Someone had put a lot of time and effort into making me look guilty. This is all fabricated. I know that, you know that, but it looks convincing enough to cause problems. John's calling for an emergency board meeting on Monday, and if the board believes him, then you're out of the company, out of your inheritance, and possibly facing criminal charges. I leaned back in my chair, feeling the walls closing in around me. John wasn't just trying to steal my life. He was trying to destroy it completely. There's more, Ruth continued. Beth filed for divorce yesterday. She's claiming emotional misuse and financial manipulation. She wants the house, full custody of the girls, and half of everything you own. On what grounds? She says you've been controlling and manipulative throughout the marriage, that you've isolated her from her friends and family, monitored her activities, and threatened her when she tried to assert her independence. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. That's rich considering she's the one who's been cheating. Can you prove the affair? I'm working on it. Ruth studied me across the table. William, I've known you your entire life. You're a good man, a hard worker, and a loyal son. But you're also naive about how ugly family fights can get. John and Beth are playing for keeps. They're not just trying to win, they're trying to annihilate you. Then I guess I need to annihilate them first. How? I thought about it. John and Beth had spent months planning their attack, building their case, positioning themselves for victory. They had forged documents, fabricated stories, and turned my own family against me. They thought they held all the cards. But they'd forgotten something important. I was an engineer. I solved problems for a living, and the biggest problem I'd ever faced was sitting right in front of me. I need to ask you something, Ruth, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Go ahead. If John succeeds in destroying me, what happens to the company? She was quiet for a moment. He becomes my heir apparent. Eventually, he'd take over as CEO. And you think he's capable of running Parish Industries? Another pause. Honestly, no. John's good at politics and presentations, but he doesn't understand the technical side of the business. Without you in the engineering department, this company would be in serious trouble. Then we have a problem, because if I go down, I'm taking the engineering department with me. What do you mean? I mean that half of my team will quit if I'm fired. The other half will be poached by competitors within 6 months. Our biggest clients will follow me wherever I go because they trust me, not the parish name. Within a year, this company will be a shell of what it is today. Ruth's face went pale. You're threatening me. I'm stating facts. John thinks he can destroy me and step into my shoes, but he's wrong. I am the engineering department. I am the client relationships. I am the institutional knowledge that keeps this place running. Take me out, and you might as well burn the building down. So what do you want? I want John gone. Completely. Out of the company, out of the family, out of my life. I want Beth to get nothing in the divorce, except what she brought into the marriage. And I want everyone to know exactly what kind of people they really are. And if I refuse, then on Monday morning, I'll walk into that board meeting and resign. I'll take my team with me, start my own company, and watch Parish Industries crumble from the outside. Ruth stared at me for a long moment. You've really changed, haven't you? I've learned that being nice gets you betrayed. Being loyal gets you stabbed in the back. Being family means nothing if there's money and power at stake. And being ruthless gets you what you want. That afternoon, I met with Sarah Chen, the private investigator I'd hired to document Beth's affair. She had a thick folder of photographs, credit card records, and hotel receipts. Your wife and your brother have been very busy, Sarah said, spreading the evidence across her desk. 3 different hotels, 2 restaurants, and a weekend getaway to the mountains. They're not exactly being subtle about it. I looked through the photographs. Beth and John holding hands in a restaurant, kissing in a hotel parking lot, entering a room together at the Marriott downtown. The images were crystal clear and completely incriminating. This is enough to prove the affair in court? More than enough. But Will, I have to ask, are you sure you want to go this route? Divorce proceedings can get very ugly, especially when there are children involved. They made it ugly when they decided to destroy my life. I'm just evening the odds. What's your plan? I smiled, and Sarah actually leaned back in her chair. I'm going to give them exactly what they want. A public confrontation, a chance to air all their grievances and make their case against me. And then I'm going to destroy them in front of everyone they care about. That evening, I called Beth. We need to talk, I said when she answered. I think our lawyers can handle the talking from now on. This isn't about the divorce. It's about the girls. They're confused and scared, and they deserve to understand what's happening to their family. There was a pause. What do you want? A family meeting. You, me, John, the girls, and Ruth. Tomorrow night at the house. We lay everything out on the table. and everyone gets to have their say. I don't think that's a good idea. I think it's the only way we're going to get through this without traumatizing Bee and Bree any more than we already have. Unless you don't care about their emotional well-being. It was a low blow, but effective. Beth's greatest weakness was her need to appear to be the perfect mother. Fine, tomorrow at 7. But Will, if you try to ambush us or cause a scene, I'm not the one who's been causing scenes, Beth. I'm just the one who's been cleaning up after them. I hung up and called Ruth, then Carl, then my daughters. By the time I was done, everything was in place for the final act of this family drama. Tomorrow night, the truth would finally come out. And Beth and John were going to discover that sometimes the house doesn't just win. Sometimes it takes everything. Sunday evening arrived, with the kind of autumn storm that made you grateful to be indoors. Rain lashed the windows of what used to be my house as I pulled into the driveway at exactly 7 o'clock. Beth's BMW and John's Mercedes were already there, along with Ruth's ancient Cadillac that she refused to replace despite being able to afford the fleet of luxury cars. I sat in my car for a moment, looking at the house where I'd lived for 8 years. The house where my daughters had taken their first steps, where we'd celebrated Christmas mornings and birthday parties, where I'd thought I was building something permanent and good. In a few hours, it would just be another place I used to live. Carl pulled up behind me. I'd asked him to come as a witness and for moral support. He was the closest thing I had to a brother now. The real kind, not the backstabbing variety. You ready for this? He asked as we walked to the front door. I've been ready for weeks. Beth answered the door, and I was struck by how different she looked. Gone was the confident, radiant woman who'd been flaunting her affair around town. In her place was someone who looked tired, stressed, and older than her 35 years. Guilt and paranoia were apparently aging her faster than time. Will, Carl. She stepped aside to let us in, her voice carefully neutral. The living room looked like a stage set for a family intervention. Ruth sat in the big armchair by the fireplace, her back straight and her hands folded in her lap like a judge waiting to render verdict. John lounged on the couch, trying to project casual confidence, but failing to hide the tension in his shoulders. Bee and Bree sat together on the love seat, holding hands and looking like they'd rather be anywhere else in the world. Thank you all for coming, I said, taking a position in the center of the room where I could see everyone. I know this is uncomfortable, but I think it's important that we clear the air about what's been happening in this family. Dad, Bee started, but I held up a hand. Let me finish, sweetheart. I promise you'll get a chance to speak. I looked around the room, making eye contact with each person. 3 weeks ago, I discovered that my wife has been having an affair with my brother. Since then, I've learned that this affair was part of a larger plan to destroy my reputation, steal my position in the company, and take custody of my children. That's not true, Beth said quickly. Will, you're making this sound like some kind of conspiracy. Am I? Let's look at the evidence. I pulled out my phone and connected it to the TV screen. John, you've been investigating my work for months, looking for ammunition to use against me. You falsified reports to make me look incompetent. You filed formal complaints with the board of directors accusing me of embezzlement and safety violations. John's face flushed. I was protecting the company. From what? From me doing my job too well? The TV screen filled with the real data from my projects, the same information I'd shown the safety committee. Every accusation you made was false. Every report you filed was fabricated. You weren't protecting the company. You were trying to destroy me. I clicked to the next set of documents. Beth, you filed for divorce, claiming emotional misuse and financial manipulation. You're asking for full custody of our daughters, based on the claim that I'm an unfit father. You are unfit, she said, but her voice lacked conviction. You're obsessive, controlling. Really? Let's ask the girls. I turned to Bee and Bree. Have I ever been controlling or harmful? Have I ever tried to isolate you from your friends or your mother? Both girls shook their heads. Bree was crying quietly. In fact, I continued, the only person in this room who's been manipulative and controlling is you, Beth. You've been lying to everyone for months. You've been using our daughters as pawns in your game. You've been destroying this family from the inside while pretending to be the victim. I clicked to the next screen and the room went dead silent. The photograph Sarah Chen had taken filled the TV. Beth and John together at restaurants, hotels, in compromising positions that left no doubt about the nature of their relationship. 7 months, I said quietly. That's how long you two have been betraying me. betraying this family, betraying everything we built together. John stood up abruptly. Okay, fine. Yes, Beth and I have been seeing each other, but it's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. You're both selfish, lying, manipulative people who decided that what you wanted was more important than the damage you'd cause getting it. We fell in love, Beth said, her voice breaking. It wasn't supposed to happen, but it did. We tried to fight it. You tried to fight it? Is that what you call planning to destroy my career and steal my children? Is that what you call 7 months of elaborate lies and manipulations? Ruth spoke for the first time since I'd arrived. Enough. Her voice cut through the room like a blade. John, Beth, is what William is saying true? John and Beth looked at each other, and I could see the moment they realized their carefully constructed lies were crumbling around them. Some of it, John admitted, but you don't understand the whole situation. Then explain it to me. John took a deep breath. Will's been difficult to work with lately. His projects were having problems, and when I tried to address them, he became defensive and paranoid. The affair with Beth just happened. We didn't plan it. You didn't plan it? I laughed, and it was not a pleasant sound. John, I have copies of text messages between you two from 4 months ago discussing how to handle the Will situation. I have records of meetings you had with department heads fishing for dirt on my work. I have documentation of every step you took to build a case against me. I clicked to the next screen, showing printed text messages, email records, and meeting schedules. This wasn't a crime of passion. This was a calculated campaign to destroy me and steal my life. The room erupted in chaos. Beth was crying. John was shouting denials. B was demanding to know how long I'd been spying on everyone, and Bree was just sitting there, looking shell-shocked. Quiet! Ruth's voice boomed through the room, and everyone fell silent. At 77, she could still command a room like a general addressing troops. John, are these documents authentic? John's shoulders sagged. Yes, but... And Beth, did you participate in planning to discredit William? Beth wiped her eyes and nodded reluctantly. We thought it would be easier if he wasn't in the picture. For everyone. Easier for who? For you two? Or for the daughters you were planning to traumatize with a custody battle? We were going to take care of the girls, John said. They would have been better off with a stepfather who's a liar and a mother who's a cheat, I interrupted. How exactly would that have been better for them? B stood up suddenly, her face flushed with anger. Stop it, all of you. Just stop it. She looked around the room at the adults who were supposed to be taking care of her and her sister. This is insane. Mom, how could you do this to us? And Uncle John, I trusted you. B, honey, Beth started. Don't honey me. You've been lying to us for months. You made us think Dad was the problem when it was you all along. Bree was sobbing now. I went to her and pulled her into a hug, and she clung to me like I was the only solid thing in a world that had suddenly turned upside down. It's okay, sweetheart, I whispered. I know this is hard, but it's almost over. Ruth stood up slowly, her face a mask of cold fury. John, you're fired, effective immediately. Clear out your office tomorrow and don't come back. Ruth, you can't. I can and I will. You've betrayed your family, your company, and your responsibilities. You're no longer a parish as far as I'm concerned. John's face went white. You don't mean that. Try me. She turned to Beth. As for you, young lady, I suggest you get yourself a very good lawyer. Because after what I've seen tonight, I don't think you're going to get much sympathy from a divorce court. This isn't fair, Beth said, her voice rising to a near shriek. Will's been obsessing over us for weeks. He's been spying on us, manipulating evidence. I've been documenting your crimes, I corrected. Everything I've shown you tonight is evidence of your betrayal and John's sabotage. None of it was obtained illegally, and all of it will hold up in court. You planned this, John said, staring at me with something like awe. All of it. From the moment you left the house, you've been planning this. I smiled, and I saw him take an involuntary step backward. Did you really think I was going to just roll over and let you destroy me? Did you think 15 years of marriage and a lifetime of brotherhood meant so little that I'd just walk away quietly? We thought you were weak, Beth whispered. You thought wrong. Carl, who'd been silent through the entire confrontation, finally spoke up. Will, I think it's time to go. He was right. I'd said what I came to say, shown what I came to show. The rest would play out in lawyers' offices and courtrooms. I hugged both my daughters and promised to call them tomorrow. I shook Ruth's hand and thanked her for her support. I looked at John and Beth sitting on opposite ends of the couch like strangers and felt nothing but pity for them. You know what the saddest part of all this is? I said as I headed for the door. We could have been happy, all of us. We had everything we needed: family, success, love, security. But it wasn't enough for you. You wanted more, and you were willing to destroy everything to get it. I paused at the door and looked back one last time. I hope it was worth it. As Carl and I walked out into the storm, I heard Beth start crying again. Not the manipulative tears she'd used to try to garner sympathy, but the deep, broken sobs of someone who'd finally realized the magnitude of what she'd lost. "So what now?" Carl asked as we got into our cars. "Now I rebuild. New house, new life, new relationships with my daughters. And John and Beth get to live with the consequences of their choices. Think they'll be okay?" I looked back at the house where my old life had died and my new one had been born. I don't really care anymore. They made their bed, now they get to lie in it. As I drove away through the storm, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. Not happiness. That would take time. But the deep, satisfying peace that comes from knowing you've fought for what mattered and won. Beth had said if I didn't like how she lived, I should just leave. So I did. But I didn't leave empty-handed. I left with my dignity, my children's respect, my grandmother's support, and my future intact. And I left them with nothing but each other and the wreckage of the life they'd tried to steal. The house always wins. But sometimes, so does the man who built it.